Hi guys, welcome back. This is Sharon Ayala and today we are crocheting a turkey. This is a two-part video tutorial. In part one we're going to be going over how to install the eyes, how to make the beak, how to sew the beak to the head, and how to do parts of the neck and also parts of the body, stuffing and closing it up together. In part two I'm going to go over the tail feathers with you and how to sew all of the turkey together. Before you start this video, you should already know how to do a magic ring and basic crochet stitches. This video tutorial is going to show you everything that's out of the ordinary and how to sew things together. With that said, I don't want you to feel bad if you've never crocheted before and you don't know how to do a magic ring and you don't know how to do basic stitches. I have a bunch of videos here on YouTube that will walk you through all of those things. So don't feel badly if you wanted to make this turkey. I have a few other videos that actually will show you how to do the first row of the turkey's head and the first few rows after that. So if you want to leave me a comment below, I can definitely point you in the right direction of getting started on making this turkey. In part two, I will show you every row of the tail feathers because those are working in half double crochet. So if you have never done half double crochet before, don't worry, I show you every single row for the tail feathers. Of course, you'll be needing the written pattern before we get started here. That should be popping up on your screen. It will also be in the description box below. Once you get to the written pattern, you're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom and look for the green print friendly button. In this written pattern, I give you the size of the turkey. I also give you a rundown of these video tutorials and the order in which the video tutorials were filmed. I tell you how to print the pattern, I give you the supplies list, abbreviation chart. I also tell you how to read rows. This is very important because my patterns are pretty simplified and probably written out much differently than most people write out their crochet patterns, so that's a good section to read. Then of course the written pattern for the turkey. So let's go over that supplies list together and then we'll get started making our turkey. To make my turkeys, I actually used 5 different yarn colors. I used red, orange, brown, yellow, and beige, and also pink. So one of my turkeys got a beigey tan colored head and one of them got a pink head. You can choose any colors you want. You don't have to use the same that I am using. This is Red Heart Comfort yarn, these bigger balls of yarn here. And then this one here is Red Heart Super Saver. You definitely don't need to use the same brand. So this is a worsted weight acrylic yarn. With that yarn I used a 4mm hook. I also used a blunt end yarn needle. A couple of stick pins come in handy for sewing. Polyester stuffing. This is 100% polyester. It's soft and springy. Make sure you get the same sort of stuffing. You want to be able to sew through your amigurumi without it clumping up. So try to find something similar. On my package it says ideal for toys and pillows. And my turkey's got a size 9mm safety eye. And you can see one of them is a little bit closer together than the other, and that is explained in the written pattern. You can do the same and play around with placement. You can also play around with the size of the eye. So if you use the same yarn and hook size that I did, then you should get a turkey about 5 inches tall. In the next clip we are working on the open beak. That's option number 1 in the written pattern. And we start off together at the end of row 2. So you're going to do rows 1 and 2 on your own, then you're going to come back here and we'll continue working on the beak together. I'm at the end of row 2 and I have 10 stitches around, and I just cut free that starting yarn tail that I crocheted around. Row 3 is 1 single crochet in the back loops only. So the stitch has 2 loops. There's the front loop, that's the one closest to you, and then the back loop is the one furthest from you. We're going to be working in the back loops for this whole row, 1 single crochet in each one of those back loops. When you land on the marker, you should be putting in a single crochet into that back loop. And that's the end of row 3, and we still have 10 stitches around. Row 4 we're going to work in both loops again, and we'll do this row together. Working in the back loops has created a little bit of a basket type bottom, so when we sew it onto the face this part will be flat. So let's do row 4 together. 3 single crochets in the first 2 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and 3 single crochets into the next stitch. 1, 2, and 3. Crochet the next 2 stitches together. One single crochet into the next stitch. Three single crochets into the next 2 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 3 into that next one. 1, 2, and 3. Crochet the next 2 stitches together. And 1 single crochet into that last stitch of the row. And that's the end of row 4. And now we have 16 stitches around. Move the marker. Row 5, we're only using up 8 stitches of this row, and then we're going to finish off. 1 single crochet in the next 7 stitches. Slip stitch the next stitch. And then we're going to finish off, leave a tail for sewing. I'm going to use this tail to sew the beak to the face. To get this ready for sewing, we're going to bring this yarn tail down to here, to where we worked in the back loops, and then we're going to knot off. And you got to knot off, otherwise it will pull the side of the beak in when you pull on the yarn tail. So I'm going to bring it right here, and I'm going to knot off right here. So I'll just pull it so it's not sticking up here, but not so hard that it alters the shape. And now I will knot off right here. So now when I pull on that, it's not going to affect the side of the beak. So we'll set it aside until we're ready to sew it to the head. Alright my friends, we're going to make this funny little piece of skin here, and this is actually called a snood, and no, I did not know that until I googled it. That's a funny name, but that's what it's called, a snood. And what we do to make one of those is chain 9, and guys, you can play around with this. You can make it longer if you wanted to. Some of these snoods on the turkey are quite long, so if you don't like this length, you can definitely make it longer. So in the pattern I say to chain 9. So all we do for this guy is just fold the chain in half, and we can also crochet around the starting yarn tail at the same time, so we can get rid of that. A little bit more awkward because it's such a small piece to be working with. So I pushed my hook through the first one, and I'm going to push my hook through the next side over. There, I'm through both sides now. Hold that starting yarn tail over that edge and crochet around it. If you're new to crochet, this would probably feel a little bit awkward. It's not difficult, it's just awkward to hold. So I got my 1 single crochet done. I'm going to go into the next chain through the first side, going through the second side, hold that starting yarn tail over, and crochet. 1 single crochet. Now I'm going to do the next one. Here, we can cut that starting yarn tail out of there now. Cut it free. And now single crochet through the last one. And from here we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And now we're going to finish off, leave a tail for sewing. We're going to use this tail to sew the snood to the beak, and also going to make a little piece under here as well with that yarn tail. You're going to set these two things aside, and we're going to go on to make the head now. You're going to do rows 1 through to the end of row 9, and then you're going to come back here and we're going to install the eyes together, and we'll also sew on the beak together. Alright guys, we're at the end of row 9, and the last stitch you just put in, pull it out and leave it in a big loop so you don't lose it. And I always make that last stitch the back of the head in the center, so I'm working on this side of the face. So that's the back of the head, and here's the front. And take a look at these two guys here. This one here, his eyes are wide apart. There's 5 visible stitch holes between them, so his eyes are kind of like on the side of his head. And this one has 3 visible stitch holes between them. So you can decide what kind of look you want to go for. I think for this guy I'll choose 3. So I've already installed one, and they go in between the 5th and 6th row, so you count up here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then you count the stitch holes 1, 2, 3. So it goes on this side. And mine have metal backs. Yours might be different. I've already installed one. Before you do this step, make sure you're totally happy with where they're at, because once you get them together you won't be able to pry them apart. So these metal backs go easier than the ones with the plastic backs. This one only takes finger power. So I hold the back and push, and there we go. In the next clip I'm going to show you how to sew this beak on before the head is stuffed. And I can't honestly tell you what is easier, to sew it on now or after the head is stuffed. So I'm going to leave that option up to you, because I'm going to show you both ways. I'm going to show you how to sew it on now before the head is stuffed, and then in part 2 of the video tutorial I'm going to show you how to sew it on after the head is stuffed. And those of you who are just starting out in crochet amigurumi, it might be a little easier to wait until the head is stuffed, because then you can pin things in place and then sew around the pins. So I'm going to let you make up your mind on that, and you can just watch what I'm doing in the next clip, and you can decide if you want to tackle it now or wait until part 2 of this video tutorial. Alright guys, we are going to sew the beak in, and all of my turkeys got the open beak. That's the one I first designed when I made the turkey, and I love that. You can give it different looks with that beak. But I do understand if you're new to crochet, this one might be a little bit more difficult to shape if you're not used to shaping amigurumi. So if that's the case, if you give that a try and it doesn't work out for you, you can choose option number 2 for the beak and just have a closed beak like this. And then you just have to sew this one in place. And the top of the beak goes underneath the 5th row, just like the other one does. And you can also wait until the head is stuffed and closed if that's easier, because it would be kind of nice if you could pin this in place and then sew it. But I'll just show you here how to sew 2 colors together. So your yarn needle, every time you go in, would want to be as close as you can get it to this beak. Then you bring it through. And when you come up from the inside, again, as close as you can get it to the beak. And then you would just push your yarn needle inside the top edge of the stitch and then into the head. This tutorial, I am going to show you how to do this open one here. So the top of the beak is the part where we put the last 7 stitches in. So it sticks out further than the bottom piece. And where we worked in the back loops, that should be like a flat bottom, like a basket type bottom. You can push it in. And that can be placed right underneath that 5th row. Hold it in place with your thumb and bring the yarn needle in as close as you can get it to that beak and bring it through. And now when you come up, come inside the beak. So I'm already inside the beak there. And again, this might be easier if the head was already stuffed and closed, because you can pin it in place. And then some people might find this part easier without it being stuffed. So it's a personal preference thing. Okay, so I'm going to go back in, pull the needle through, going back inside the head, and through the beak. I want this part right here to be right underneath that 5th row, and I want it to be really stuck to the head. So I'm going to put a couple more stitches there and through in between the 5th and 6th row. I'm going to bring my needle in between the 5th and 6th row and bring it through. Coming up in between the 5th and 6th row, and then I'm going to push it over the needle, the beak itself. Oh, that feels better now. And then again for the side here, I'm going to put a couple more stitches here. Okay, so I got all the stitches I needed all around the bottom, the sides of the beak, and I pulled the stitches fairly tight to keep that nice and sturdy. So what I'm going to do now is bring this yarn tail through the side of the beak and get ready to sew here, because now I'm going to shape the beak. I just want my yarn up through the side here. There we go. So you can see what I've done. This guy looks like he's smiling, and this guy has got more of a turkey looking beak, I think. So that's the one I'm going to use right now. So I'm going to push this up and these two sides down. And I'm going to sew these two edges together. And it only takes a couple of stitches. This side's already done. I'll bring one down, one more on the side, and then I'll bring this to the middle. I'm weaving it over. I want it right here. So then I'm going to pinch the sides of the beak, this side over here, and do the same thing over here. Put a couple stitches to hold that shape. Okay, now I'm going to bring my yarn needle right up through the center to pull this part upward. And pull. And now I'm going to knot off to hold that shape. I knotted it off here, so now I carried it through here and I can cut it free. We are now going to carry on with the head, and we're going to sew the snood in at the very end of the video tutorial, so that would be at the end of part 2. We'll also do the eyelids and the tuft of hair at the same time. So now we're going to carry on with the head, and we're going to work on this part together. So once you're done row 14, then you're going to come back here, hit play again, and we'll carry on with the turkey's body together. In the next clip, you're going to see the turkey's head without the beak sewn on, and you are still on the right video. It's just because I backtracked and showed you how to sew on the beak without the head being stuffed. So for the rest of this video tutorial, you're going to see the turkey without a beak. Alright my friends, we are at the end of row 14 and we have 15 stitches around. Moved our marker, and row 15 is working in the front loops only. So when you look at a stitch, you can see there's 2 loops in a stitch. There's a front loop, that's the one closest to you, and the back loop is the one furthest from you. You're going to put 1 single crochet in each one of those 15 front loops. So when you land on the marker, you should be putting in a single crochet into the front loop. Alright, coming to the end of this row, I have 2 stitches left. 1 single crochet in that front loop, and then the last one, a single crochet into that last front loop. I'm going to move my marker. It's the end of row 15, and we still have 15 stitches around, and if you look inside here, you can see the loops that we created when we worked in the front loops only, and we're going to be working in those loops for row 17. But first we're going to do row 16 together, and we're going to create this little bit around the turkey's neck here. So row 16, we're working in both loops now, and we're going to put one single crochet into that first stitch. We're going to chain 4 from here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, now we're going to single crochet down here into the bottom. We're not going to be working in that chain, so there's the 4 chains that we just made. We're going to bypass those and we're going to single crochet down here and go through both loops of the V of that first single crochet we made when we worked in that stitch. So go through that V and do a single crochet, and now one single crochet in the next 2 stitches. 1, 2. One and 2. From here, chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bypass that chain altogether and single crochet down here, going through both loops of that V. Single crochet, and now single crochet in the next 2 stitches. Okay, I'm coming to the end. I'm going to do my last little blurb here. And chain 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and single crochet through that V. I'm going to single crochet into the next stitch, and now I'm going to slip stitch the very last stitch. So instead of doing a single crochet, go through, pull the yarn through. Instead of yarning over, just pull the first loop through the second loop, and we finish that row. Now we're going to continue on to row 17. We're not going to break free. We're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And now let's fold this back to expose those loops underneath. So if you look in here, you can see all these loops here. There's 15 of those. And here's the first one we're going to work in. It's dipped down a little bit. You have to search for it. And then the last one we work in is right here. And you should count them right now to make sure you know where all of those loops are, and you don't want to skip over any. It's very easy to do that in these small little rounds. And this chain 3 that we made, we're not going to be working in this chain. We just made it so we can bridge across that space between here and that first loop. So go through that first loop, and we're going to change colors in this first loop. So go through that first one, pull the yarn through, and then hold the working yarn back there with your finger. And now I'm going to bring in the color change. I'm going to hold it underneath the same fingers. So holding 2 yarn tails back there, get ready to crochet on with my new color, and then switch fingers. Now pull the new color through those 2 loops. And we've just switched colors. Now we're going to put a single crochet in the next loop over, and we can let go of those yarn tails. And we're going to put 2 single crochets into the next stitch. So that started our sequence. 1 single crochet in the first, 1 single crochet in the second, then 2 single crochets in the third. And we're going to repeat that all the way to the end. 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2. So now I'm coming to the end of the row, and I have those 3 loops left. There's the chain we made, and there's the last loop we're going to work in. 1 single crochet in the next 2 loops, and now 2 single crochets into that last loop. And you should do a stitch count, make sure you haven't skipped over any loops, but pull out your last stitch so you don't lose it. Then the first one to count underneath this big loop, you can see it there, that first V, and you count all the way around. And the last one to count is this pink one in front of this brown one, so this one right here. So when you get here, you should count 20. And there's the chain that we made. We're not working in the chain. We just want to work in that first stitch there. We can break free from the pink because we're not going to be using the pink anymore. So these 2 yarn tails here, you can knot them up. You don't need to knot too tightly. I just want to knot them once, and I'm going to cut them a bit shorter and leave them hanging inside the head. Now we're ready to carry on to row 18. 1 single crochet in the next 3 stitches, and then 2 single crochets in the next stitch, and we're working in both loops again. And the first stitch to go into is right here. Coming to the end of the row, 1 single crochet in the next 3, and 2 into that last stitch. And that ends row 18, and now we have 25 stitches around. So I'll let you continue on with the pattern. We'll meet back here at the end of row 26, and we'll do row 27 together, and we'll also close up the body together. At the end of row 26, we're ready to stuff the body. Make sure to pull out a large loop like this and just leave it hanging so you don't lose it as you're stuffing the body. And you don't need to stuff the entire thing full. We just want the majority in there. We're going to stuff more after the end of the next row. And don't worry about this, we're going to fix that part too after we get the next row done. So let's carry on. We're not going to add a marker. We now have 14 stitches around. Row 27, 1 single crochet in the next 2 stitches and then 2 together. Repeat that sequence 4 times. So let's do it together. For this row, I squeeze the body together to make it easier to get in there. Push the stuffing down out of our way. To want to pull it through the stitches. So get that down out of the way. And now we're ready to carry on. 1 single crochet in the next 2 stitches. And now 2 together. And I am going to rotate this, make it easier, and then squeeze it together again. So that was one sequence. We need to do it 3 more times. 1 single crochet in the next 2 stitches. And now 2 together. I'm going to move it over and make it easier. We need to do that sequence 2 more times. I'm going to squeeze it together, 1 single crochet in the next 2. And now 2 together. And last time for this row, 1 single crochet in the next 2. And now 2 together. And now we can finish off. We're going to leave a tail for sewing. We need a tail to sew up the gap. And also, we are going to sew this part down too. So we want a little bit of a tail to do all of that. Pull that yarn tail through that loop, get it down to about there and pull tight. Now we're going to stuff the body some more, but first we're going to weave in and out of the remaining stitches. So go through, in, and out, all the way around to where you started. Now I'm going to stuff some more into the body. And if you can't get your finger in there, then the back end of a pencil works great, or a stuffing stick like a chopstick would work. Make sure you get stuffing all down in this area here. Okay, now I'm going to pull on the yarn tail to close up that gap. Now we need to knot it off to hold it closed. Just go through a stitch close by, and then go through that loop. And then pull tight. And if you feel it didn't knot off, then just do it again. Wrap around a stitch, go through that loop, and pull tight. Okay, now I want to sew this little part down here. So stretch it all out with your fingers and get them to lay down nice. And now we're going to put a stitch in all these little spaces here. You can use the brown yarn to do that. It actually disappears after you get them stitched down. And I'll show you how to do that. Just go up through the body, come up through the middle, come through the middle, and just wrap over any little bit of yarn you see in there. Just over a little bit of yarn and go back down. Don't pull too tight, it alters the shape. Just pull snug enough to pull it into place. You can rearrange it. There we go. And do all of them. Okay, once you're done, just knot off anywhere. pull tight, and then bring it through anywhere else on the body. Pull on it slightly and cut. Alright my friends, that brings us to the end of this video. In the next one, part 2, we're going to be working on the tail feathers together, and then we're going to finish up the turkey and sew it all together. That video should be popping up on your screen. You can just click that little box and I'll meet you over there.